Please be seated. Good afternoon. Can you hear me at the back? Just put your hands up if you can. All right, thank you very much. My name is Gerald Graham, and I am pleased to be, thank you very much, I'm not running, not that I know of yet. I'm pleased that I was asked back again. I was here in 2011 when we had two leaders show up for the debate, and we've got two here again today. I'd like to welcome all of you. It's a sellout, so thank you very much for showing your support for democracy in Ontario. And I'd like to welcome people across the province and around the world watching online today. And thank you for the broadcasters carrying the signal. The Northern Leaders Debate is hosted by a number of groups: the Northwestern Ontario Municipal Association, the Northwestern Ontario Associated Chambers of Commerce, the Federation of Northern Ontario Municipalities, the Northeastern Ontario Chambers of Commerce, and the Anishinaabe Nation. The event is sponsored by the Northern Policy Institute and generously supported by netnewsledger.com and the Valhalla Inn. We're happy to have two provincial leaders in attendance today. On my right, leader of the Ontario Liberal Party, Kathleen Wynne. And I guess somewhat appropriately on my left, Andrea Horwath, leader of the Ontario New Democratic Party. Here's the format that has been agreed upon by both parties. The forum will open and close with 2-minute statements by each leader, which we'll get to in just a minute. The leaders will then be asked questions by our esteemed panelists. I'm going to ask each one to stand, actually, while I introduce them so you can see them down front. Kenora Mayor Dave Canfield, President of the Northwestern Ontario Municipal Association. Nathan Lawrence, President of the Northwestern Ontario Associated Chambers of Commerce. Kapuskasing Mayor Al Spacek, President of the Federation of Northern Ontario Municipalities. Nick Stewart, Northeastern Ontario Chambers of Commerce. And Deputy Chief Les Ludith from the Anishinaabe Nation. Each leader will have 90 seconds, that's a minute and a half, to respond to each question. Time is closely monitored by our timekeeper, Josh. Thank you, Josh. The yellow card, Josh, just hold the yellow card up so we can see it. It says right on there, you have 20 seconds to wrap up. You don't want to see the red card for too long. Josh, you want to hold that one up? That means that time has run out and that the microphone will be shut off within seconds. I'll try and be as well, maybe liberal is not the right word to use. I'll try and be as democratic as I can in how long the leaders can go over. Now, your rules, as the audience, are quite simple as well. They'll be strictly enforced, I've been told. Apparently, there are a number of police officers here. No yelling, heckling, or unruly behavior during the forum. Clapping is allowed, by the way, but we're going to ask you to hold your applause until after both leaders have had a chance to answer the questions. Should I run over those again? Okay. The order of the opening and closing statements has been drawn by the two parties. And Ms. Wynne is going to open. You have 2 minutes for an opening statement.
Thank you very much, Gerald. Oh, and there's another rule. We have to push. Sorry. Good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour, bonjour, Ani. It is wonderful to be back in Thunder Bay, and it's wonderful to be here with you on the traditional territory of the Fort William First Nation. J'aimerais aussi saluer la communauté francophone qui habite le Nord. I'd like to thank NOMA for organizing this opportunity for us to talk about our vision for this province from a northern perspective. Comme Canadiens, on s'identifie comme un peuple nordique. Mais souvent, les gens ressentent que le gouvernement ne comprend pas bien le Nord. I believe that as Canadians and as Ontarians, we identify ourselves as a northern people. And yet I often hear that people feel that the government doesn't get the northern perspective. And that's exactly why, as a minister, I intentionally came to the North. I made it my business in all of the portfolios that I held to make sure that I understood the northern perspective. When I was Minister of Education, for example, I traveled to Sioux Narrows to a school that had 6 students in it. And once I had seen that school firsthand, it was much clearer to me why that school needed to stay open. Today, we're talking about our plan to build Ontario up. We're going to talk about the Ring of Fire, I'm sure, ONTC, the need for great infrastructure, excellent health care, and excellent education. And all of that is very important to you as Northerners. We also understand how important you are to the rest of the province. The North is going to be an economic driver again. It's going to be an economic driver again because of those resources. We need that chromite, but we also need your talent, your ingenuity, and your determined spirit. I want you to know that our plan is rooted in what you have said to us and in my own experience here. I've listened and we have learned from you. Thank you very much. Merci, miigwech.
Thank you, Ms. Wynne. Ms. Horwath.
Thanks very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really pleased that Ms. Wynne has decided to join us today. Mr. Hudak's absence sums up, I think, his opinion of Northerners and how he feels about them. Hardworking people, that's what Northerners are. You are hardworking, honest people, and you deserve a hardworking, honest government. And that starts by cleaning up corruption. We have a plan that we launched this morning that focuses on your priorities. But before we get to that, we have to clean up the corruption at Queen's Park. You know, the day that the OPP showed up and took those hard drives out of Queen's Park was the day that I heard the people of Ontario say that they had had enough. They had had enough of the Liberal betrayals, enough of their lies, enough of the wasted billions and billions of dollars for their own gain. And Ms. Wynne was at the center of it. She was a senior cabinet minister. She was a campaign co-chair. She endorsed it all. So the question is, who will listen to you? The question is, who will get results for you? Liberals make promise after promise after promise. They got promises every year. For 10 years, you got promises, hesitations, delays. But there was no hesitation or delay when it came to throwing your hard-earned tax dollars at their political priorities and left you twisting in the wind. An NDP government will work hard on your priorities. This government has shown that they are corrupt and that they don't deserve your vote. Our plan is going to make sure that resources in the North create jobs in the North, that we reward people who invest and hire in the North, and that we make your life affordable by getting the HST off of your bills. That's a plan that makes sense.
Thank you very much, Ms. Horwath. We'll start with the questions now. The first question will be posed by Kenora Mayor Dave Canfield to Ms. Wynne.
Good afternoon, leaders, and thank you for being here. To open this up, the future of Ontario is in Northern Ontario. Question number 1. The Common Voice Northwest Energy Task Force has identified the electrical energy needs of Northwest, including the ongoing role of the Atikokan and Thunder Bay Thermal Generating Station and the urgent transmission needs of the region, particularly as it relates to the new mining development and forestry opportunities. Please outline your party's specific plan for energy supply in the Great Northwest.
Thanks very much, Mayor Canfield. And I just want to say that the investments that we have made in our electricity system, remembering that when we came into office in 2003, the electricity system was in a shambles in Ontario. There needed to be investments, including more than 10,000 kilometers of transmission line, including the east-west tie, including investment in the lower Matagami. We have made those investments. We will continue to work to make sure that there's connectivity across the province. I had the opportunity to meet with Mayor Roy Hoffman in Pickle Lake last summer, and we talked about the needs of Pickle Lake and the need for more capacity there. That is part of our long-term energy plan. The conversion of the Thunder Bay and Atikokan plants to biomass, that's part of our plan. That work is ongoing right now. So we are committed to making sure that we continue to make the investments, including, and I would just say this is part of the energy question in the north, making sure that electricity is affordable. So the Northern Industrial Electricity Rate Program is extremely important to make sure that energy is affordable for those energy concentrated industries, and making sure that we have programs in place that give people a reduction who need it, for low-income folks, for people who are struggling to pay their bills. We have done that work. We will continue to work and make sure that there is an energy supply for the north, particularly the northwest.
Thank you, Ms. Wynne. Response from Ms. Horwath.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if Northerners are a bit pessimistic about the promises Liberals make about their energy supply, considering that they promised twice to convert the coal plant to gas-fired plant, and twice they broke that promise. And now we have the very same committee, Mayor Canfield, that you talked about, that is warning the Liberals that there isn't enough biomass being stockpiled to meet the energy needs next winter, let alone the energy needs that are going to be necessary to ensure that the mining companies that are already around northwestern Ontario, and I talk to the mayor of Red Lake often about this, Mayor Phil, I'm sure he's here somewhere, but the fact of the matter is we need to make sure that in the short term that biomass is enough to meet the needs of northwestern Ontario. Apparently, at this point, the only thing the Liberals are committing to is enough biomass to get you through till the middle ways through January of next year. That's not good enough. But in the longer term, we need to take a look at that generating station, at that generation capacity, and the possibility of actually turning it into a gas-fired plant. The Liberals have failed when it comes to our electricity system. Our hydro costs twice as what they pay in Manitoba, just across the border, and what they pay in Quebec. And their plan is a status quo plan that hasn't made sense for the last couple of years and isn't going to make sense in the future. New Democrats are going to clean up the mess in the electricity system so it's reliable for everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Horwath. The next question is going to be posed by Nathan Lawrence to Ms. Horwath.
Ms. Horwath, the Ring of Fire is a multi-generational economic opportunity for the province that will generate $25 billion in economic activity and sustain 5,500 jobs per year over a 32-year period. To unlock this potential, the provincial and federal governments need to commit to funding all-season transportation infrastructure in the Ring of Fire. What are the specific steps that your party will take to plan and construct the necessary transportation, energy, and telecommunications infrastructure? What levels of investment will you commit to? What time frame? And what role will the First Nations and municipalities have in planning and ownership?
Thank you very much for the very important question. Look, it is obvious that the Ring of Fire is a great opportunity for Northern Ontario. It's an opportunity that's sat waiting to be realized, though, while the Liberals have done nothing over the last number of years. We just saw, of course, not only Cliffs walking away a little while back, but the final nail in the coffin when they sold their exploration camp just the other day. That is because there is no confidence in the Liberals to get it right in the Ring of Fire. The investment has to come right away. The discussions around opening up the corridor, deciding which corridor we're going to utilize and which mode of transportation we're going to utilize needs to happen quickly. New Democrats are committed not only to the $1 billion, but if it takes more than $1 billion, then we're committed to that as well, because the opportunity is magnificent for Northern Ontario communities and for First Nations. We're also going to, however, make sure that there is a revenue sharing plan in place that's negotiated with First Nations communities and with Northern communities, so that the resources that we're pulling out of the ground in the Ring of Fire is actually benefiting your communities. We think that that's an extremely important principle. The bottom line is 5,500 jobs have been left on the table year after year as the Liberals have not delivered on the Ring of Fire.
Thank you, Ms. Horwath. Ms. Wynne, your response?
Well, let me just say that the Ring of Fire is a national project that is at least as important as the oil sands in Alberta. And so the actions that we have taken to make sure that we have a framework agreement in place with the Matawa First Nations that actually provides a framework for the resource revenue sharing that needs to happen and the protection for environmental rights. That's a historic agreement that has been signed off on already. We have committed $1 billion with or without the Harper government. We do need a federal partner to develop the Ring of Fire in the same way that the federal government has worked in the oil sands. But we're going to move ahead with or without, and we've committed $1 billion to make sure that that infrastructure gets built. I've committed to, within 60 days, if we're privileged to be re-elected, to bring together that development corporation and to actually get started on that work. And we have seen, you know, I'm going to turn around what Ms. Horwath said about the cliff situation, where we see the confidence in the Ring of Fire and in the work that we've done because Noront is interested in those assets. So there has been a lot of movement. It is extremely important to the north that the Ring of Fire be developed. The work that we have done in the last few years is preparing the table to make sure that that work happens. It would be great to have a federal partner, but we're going ahead with or without them.
Thank you, Ms. Wynne. Our next question will be posed by Kapuskasing Mayor Al Spacek to Ms. Wynne.
It has been recognized that municipalities serviced by the Ontario Provincial Police have been paying inequitable costs of policing services. As a result, a new billing model was introduced in an attempt to even out the extreme highs and lows created by the current model. However, there's too much uncertainty in the proposed formula, which concerns many small and rural municipalities across the north. Small and rural municipalities are responsible for the same legislative and reporting requirements as their larger counterparts, but do not have the resources to deal with the increasing demands mandated by the province. Would your party agree to take back the responsibility for policing small municipalities with a population of 5,000 or less?
Thanks for the question, Mayor Spacek. And I just want to say as a starting point that it has been a tenet of certainly my time in provincial politics that the relationship between the provincial government and municipalities is one that is fundamental to the success of the province. And so the work that we have done together, whether it's on committees of the Association of Municipalities of Ontario or whether it's in the Memorandum of Understanding table, which meets monthly with the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, allows an ongoing dialogue. The OPP billing cost is one of those discussions. It's one of those things that is very important. As you know, there is huge disparity across the province. There are some municipalities where there is zero cost per person in terms of those police services, and in other it's several $100s per person. So it has to be evened out. We appreciate the work that the leadership of the municipalities has done with us. I have expressed concern with my colleagues that the final formula has not been decided upon. The work is still ongoing. But I am concerned that there is going to be, at the end of the day, some capacity that small municipalities are not going to be able to bear. And so if we can introduce this idea into that mix, into that discussion, I think that would be a very good thing, because I do think there will need to be some mitigation, but we do have to even out the costs.
Thank you, Ms. Wynne. Ms. Horwath, your response.
I want to say, first and foremost, how much I appreciate the work that you do at the municipal level to make your communities strong and vibrant and safe. Having been a municipal councillor myself as well, I know what it takes, and it takes a lot of hard work and a lot of attention to details at a time when it's a struggle, frankly, to make sure that you're able to meet those needs with budgets that are often rather dwindling because of reductions or losses in your municipal tax base for various reasons, which we might get into a little later on. But nonetheless, it is absolutely the case that we will look at this proposal and take it very, very seriously if we're privileged enough to form a government. We know that the cutbacks to the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund have also negatively affected the capacity of municipalities to be able to absorb these extra costs in cases where their costs are increasing with these new discussions. And so we're definitely prepared to have a hard look, particularly at the small municipalities of under 5,000, but also address some of the concerns that you've raised with me about the lack of transparency in the billing process, so that you have a better ability to determine exactly what it is you're paying for and how you can work with the OPP to make sure that you're getting the service you need for your community. I look forward to the opportunity to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Horwath. The next question will be posed by Nick Stewart to Ms. Horwath.
This was touched on earlier, but one of the key challenges to attracting industry to the north is the high cost of electricity, which drastically and negatively impacts our ability to be competitive. Worse yet, costs are projected to rise in the months and years to come, amplifying the major disadvantage we have to neighboring jurisdictions, where rates are lower and sometimes significantly. This disparity has a very real impact on our communities. For example, the high cost of power has contributed to the closure of Timmins' Kidd Metallurgical site in 2010, putting more than 600 people out of work. What steps would your party take to permanently reduce the cost of electricity?
Thanks, Nick, for the question. Look, I hear this everywhere I go in Ontario, but it hurts a little bit more here in the north when you can, particularly the northwest, when you can generate power at such a reasonable rate with hydroelectric power. And when you see, literally across the border in Manitoba, the price of hydroelectricity is half of what you're paying here in the north and what we're paying in Ontario. And of course, on the other side, Quebec, same deal. They have electricity rates that are half or less than what Ontario charges. And I don't think it's any surprise that those two provinces have maintained an electricity system that's in the interest of the public. The Conservatives deregulated and started selling off our electricity system. The Liberals continued to do that under their reign. And what we have now are power prices that make us uncompetitive in terms of our economy. New Democrats think that that was the wrong thing to do, and we think that the Liberals have been wrong-headed in not addressing it. They've continued to bring more private power deals into the grid. In fact, that's what the Mississauga and Oakville gas plants were all about. We're going to take the four agencies, we're going to collapse them. We're going to get rid of a layer of bureaucracy at the top. We're going to cap the CEO salaries. We're going to have the Auditor General look at all of those private power deals that Liberals and Conservatives have made, and we're going to start directing our marketing ourselves so that we can get a better price for the power that we're selling to light up the Manhattan skyline. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Horwath. Response from Ms. Wynne.
Thank you very much. So as I said earlier, the reliability of our energy system was very much in question in 2003. There had been years of neglect. There had not been the necessary investments made in our system. We have made those investments, and I am proud of the work that we have done to make this system make it reliable and make it accessible and make it predictable and stable for industry and for residents alike. But there is a cost associated with that, and we have recognized that. So we are taking costs out of the system. We renegotiated the Samsung deal, which will take $2 billion out of the system. We have made a determination, and I don't know what the NDP's position on this is, but we have made a determination not to go ahead with building new nuclear, which would cost $15.5 billion. Tim Hudak says he will go ahead with that, even though we know that that power is not needed at this time. So we have done those things. Those will take costs out of the system, and we have put in place the supports that we know businesses and residents need. So the NIRP program, the Northern Industrial Program, that allows businesses to have a lower rate. We have put in place the programs that help residents to deal with their energy costs. But make no mistake, folks, we need to continue to make investments. If everyone in the north is going to be connected and is going to have the power that they need, we're going to have to continue to make those investments in the electricity system around the province, and we will do that.
Thank you, Ms. Wynne. Next question will be posed by Grand Chief Les Looted to Ms. Lynn.
Hi, good afternoon, leaders. This question is on the subject of electricity to remote First Nation communities. Ms. Wynne, if you are re-elected Premier of Ontario, will your government direct the OPA to make firm and immediate plans to connect the 21 Nan First Nations as identified in the OPA's Remote Community Connection Plan, referenced in Chapter 4 of Ontario's Long-Term Energy Plan? And if so, what will be the timeline to begin to implement the OPA's plan? If the federal government is committed to cost-sharing the connection for these First Nations, such as the CCEG transmission line project, which is sponsored by Nan First Nations.
Well, thank you very much, Deputy Grand Chief, for the question. And I think that you've pointed to the reality that this connection is in our long-term energy plan. We are committed to doing this. But it's also the case that it's another example where we need a federal partner. And so the condition that you put on that question, that if the federal government is willing to cost share, is a very important one, because it is something that needs to happen. And if they are willing to cost share that, we would like to move as quickly as possible, because I think it's very important that those communities be connected. It's important for the quality of life of the people in the First Nations, but it's also important to the economic viability of the communities as well. So it's something that actually I believe my officials have raised with the Prime Minister's office, with the federal government. It's something that needs to happen. It's in our long-term energy plan, and we will move on it. We need that partnership.
Thank you, Ms. Wynne. Ms. Horwath, response.
Thanks very much, Grand Chief, Deputy Grand Chief. I really appreciate the question. Look, it's very distressing to see what continues to be conditions in First Nations communities that can be addressed by the access to electricity in a more reliable way, in a way that opens up opportunity for the communities. And so we are very, very interested in moving forward, and not just in a passive way, and making sure that we're with you, amplifying your voice when it comes to discussions with the federal government in terms of the requirement to bring them to the table to help bring these projects online, and to make sure that the communities benefit from the power, because it is absolutely the case that there is opportunity and that there can be a great difference made by in terms of the quality of life and the standard of life of First Nations communities when they get access to power. And so New Democrats will definitely commit to doing everything we can to work with you to ensure that happens in all of the communities.
Thank you, Ms. Horwath. The next question will be the second question for Kenora Mayor David Canfield to Ms. Horwath.
Thank you, leaders. For a variety of reasons, including the decline in the forest industry, related changes by MPAC on how the remaining forest operations are assessed, reductions to the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund contribution to the individual communities, and an overall decline in the industrial assessment base of the majority of northern communities, northern towns are in financial jeopardy. What steps will your party take, should you form the next government, to provide northern municipalities with a solid, sustainable, equitable, and affordable revenue stream that does not place undue burden on local property taxpayers who in this part of the country are paying the highest property taxes in this country?
Thank you very much for the question. You know, I've been to towns where they've told me they're not going to have a mayor likely running in the municipal elections coming up, because nobody wants to be the mayor when the town goes bankrupt because of the MPAC system. That is a pretty horrifying thing in this province, when municipalities don't have municipal leaders willing to step up, because the province has so disadvantaged them when it comes to the MPAC system. So New Democrats, if we form a government, will immediately take on this issue with MPAC, and it's northern communities and other communities around the province as well. When those industrial users all of a sudden are those industrial ratepayers rather are all of a sudden given huge reductions in their assessment, and those reductions literally cut a municipal municipality's budget in half or worse. That is not acceptable. I know that the government has, as a result, had to bail out some communities to prevent them from going bankrupt. That's a position that no municipality, no town should be put in whatsoever. So we're going to make sure that that impact system is there for communities and for municipalities. We're also going to make sure, though, that we're providing new revenue streams with revenue sharing agreements from new mining that comes into this province, because you should be getting some of the revenues from the mining that's happening in your municipalities and regions.
Thank you, Ms. Horwath. Response from Ms. Lynn.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor Canfield. So I think the single most important thing that we can do in terms of government facilitating and partnering with the North is to make sure that we take advantage of, with you, every opportunity to grow and expand your economy. So making sure that we make the right investments in the talent and the skills of the young people and the communities in the North, making sure that we make the right investments in infrastructure and make sure that we invest in the roads and the bridges and all of the transportation infrastructure that you need in your communities to make sure that businesses will come and that they will thrive. And then creating a business climate that is strong enough and competitive enough to bring businesses. So that means partnering with communities, partnering with businesses to repurpose plants when they're in a transition. So I remember meeting with Mayor King of Terrace Bay, and before the Birla plant was, the Birla company was involved in repurposing the plant in Terrace Bay. But it was that kind of partnership that was facilitated in part, not completely, but in part by Minister Gravel and our government working community and business on the three ways, making sure that those opportunities are there. The Northern Ontario Heritage Fund is a very important job creator and a stream of revenue to the North. So those are the things that we will continue. That's what our plan is.
Thank you, Ms. Wynne. Our next question comes from Nathan Lawrence, again to Ms. Wynne.
Ms. Wynne, Ontario's deficit and debt are projected to increase to $12.5 billion and $295.8 billion respectively in 2014-2015. Our large debt is eroding Ontario's capacity to deliver services. What specific steps will you take to eliminate the deficit and pay down the debt while protecting the core services that Ontarians value?
So let me just say that every single year since the economic downturn, our budget was in balance, and then there was a severe hit to the Ontario economy, and nowhere was it felt more than in the North. And so we have been dealing with that deficit that was created because of that economic downturn. We're dealing with an added situation at this particular moment because our revenues are not what we had expected, and the federal government has made a decision to treat Ontario differently than every other province and not to flow transfer payments in the same way that they do to other provinces. So we're dealing with a situation that requires at this moment that we make investments to make sure that we have the steady economic growth that we need. I talked just a moment ago about our plan of investment in the talent and skills of people, the infrastructure, and a competitive business climate. Well, that's what we have to do across the province, in the North, but across the province. And if we do that, in these next couple of years, we make those investments, we will see the kind of growth. Already, we have 95,000 jobs created last year alone, new jobs created last year alone. That's the kind of investment that's needed right now if we are going to be able to recover. Cutting 100,000 jobs from the economy, which is what Tim Hudak wants to do, will push us back, will actually slow our recovery and slow our ability to deal with our deficit.
Ms. Wynne, thank you very much. Response from Ms. Horwath.
I'd like to start by acknowledging that the recession hit the North far before it hit the rest of Ontario. We were already dealing with some serious job loss and serious loss in the forestry sector, particularly well before the rest of Ontario hit the recession. Having said that, I'll tell you what I won't do. I won't spend $1.1 billion of your dollars canceling gas plants and putting it on the debt for the rest of us to have to deal with. Look, it's about respecting your tax dollars. That's what it's about. It's about making sure that we're watching every penny, like we do around the kitchen table when we're counting up our bills at the end of the month. That's what New Democrats are going to do. We're going to take the waste that we've seen with the Liberals and get rid of it. We're going to collapse some agencies, as I've already talked about in hydro, but there are others as well. We're going to cap the CEO salaries in this province in the public sector for a change. We're going to bring savings through making sure that we're doing bulk purchases in a lot of different areas. There is a lot of waste in our system at the top. We're going to make sure we get rid of that and invest it in frontline services while getting rid of the deficit. I believe in balanced budgets. We will have a balanced budget by 2017-18. That is the history of my political party, frankly, with Tommy Douglas. He used to say that he'd be rather take the interest that the banks are getting on debt and use it to actually provide services instead of giving it to the banks. That's what I believe as well. And New Democrats will deliver results when it comes to savings with our Financial Accountability Office and making sure we have a Minister for Savings and Accountability. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Horwath. Next question comes from Kapuskasing Mayor Al Spasik to Ms. Horwath.
Thank you. Ms. Horwath, Northern Ontario is consistently met with policy and legislation that is imposed upon us, often without consultation or consideration for the impacts that it will have on our region. There have been several instances that have demonstrated this, such as the Far North Act and the Endangered Species Act. There is also the ongoing concern that introduced policy and legislation is heavily influenced by environmental groups. Do you believe that the future of Ontario is in Northern Ontario, and what is your position to ensure that when developing policy and legislation that affects the North, local government and stakeholders are consulted?
Well, I'm glad for the question, Al, because we have watched as Northerners continue to be frustrated by a lack of voice when decision-making is happening in Toronto, and that's something that is absolutely unacceptable. You may know that New Democrats have proposed a committee at Queen's Park that would be made up of all MPPs, so regardless of political stripe, to look at exactly this issue and make sure that as legislation comes forward, and not just legislation specific to the North, but other legislation as well, to see how it will impact on the North, because we believe that Northern voices are the most important piece of ensuring that we get it right for Northern Ontario. But we also know that there's the legislation that exists that has been in some ways ignored or duplicated or creates great confusion when it's not observed. For example, the Crown Forest Sustainability Act. If there are regulations or things that are going to be changing, we need to make sure that they're in line with that legislation so that we don't get problems when it comes to standards or regulations that might not be beneficial. We are committed to listening to what you have to say, to hearing what you have to say, and to acting on your interests, because you're the experts, you're the people that know best when it comes to Northern Ontario. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Horwath. Response from Ms. Lynn.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the question, Mayor Spacek. Well, we have already put in place a cabinet committee, a Northern Cabinet Committee, so that every piece of legislation that goes through our government goes through that filter, and we look at it in terms of the impacts on the North. But the thing that I want to say is that I have made it my business in every ministry that I have had the privilege of leading to make sure that I understand the issues from the Northern perspective. And so when I came into this office and I realized that the ONTC decision that had been made, and I knew that it had been made without the voices of the North being heard adequately, we changed that process. We reversed that decision. We made sure that an advisory committee, and Mayor Spacek, you served on that committee. We changed the process, and the divestiture of the ONTC was not the only option as we went into that process. So we have changed the way we interact with decisions that are made in the North, at Queen's Park, because there has to be more interaction between those. And I think it is about the structures we put in place, but it's also about an attitude. It's also about what is the attitude of the leadership at Queen's Park. And I just want everyone in this room to know that my intention and my record has been that I work with the people for whom the decisions will have the greatest impact, and we will continue to do that in every way possible.
Thank you, Ms. Wynne. Our next question comes from Nick Stewart to Ms. Wynne.
Ms. Wynne, the Conference Board of Canada reported last year that the skills gap currently costs the Ontario economy $24 billion every year, and nowhere is this gap more pronounced than in Northern Ontario. In the Cochrane District alone, the mining sector is projected to need roughly 12,000 new hires between now and 2022. This is a common tale across all sectors of the North, and the need for decisive and immediate workforce development continues to be more pressing every year. What steps will your party take to ensure that Northern businesses and industries have access to a sufficiently skilled workforce?
It's a great question, Nick, and it's exactly the reason that making investments in education and training programs targeted in the way that you're identifying is very important. That means government working, and that means colleges and universities working in conjunction with industry and with labor to make sure that the kinds of programs that are put in place are the ones that are needed. So the youth job strategy that we developed that has already helped 11,000 young people to find opportunities and placements, that's the kind of program that needs to be in place. We announced in our plan yesterday, Experience Ontario, another opportunity for young people to work in an environment where they might not necessarily have thought that their career might be, but we can work with industry. If government works with industry to provide those opportunities, then that kind of possibility will come to kids. So we have already begun on that process, and that's why it's extremely important that right now we not step back from those programs. So quite frankly, when Tim Hudak and Andrea Horwath talk about cutting waste, I understand that there are people angry about the gas plant relocation, and I have apologized for that. But the fact is that we absolutely must make investments in the future of this province, and the most important resource that we have is our young people.
Thank you, Ms. Wynne. Response from Ms. Horwath.
Thanks very much. You raise a really important issue, and I hear it across chambers of commerce, frankly, across the province have talked to me about this very issue. There's a sense of disconnect that they're feeling occurs with post-secondary education and the workforce. Our MPP, Peggy Sattler, who is a school board trustee from the London area, actually brought forward a private member's bill that creates a connectivity between young people leaving school and the private sector, as well as some facilitation from government, and it's basically creates pathways to experiential learning and workforce, and that's something that really it comes from chambers that have told us that they're concerned about it, and the education system, the people in the education system have actually acknowledged that there's some work that needs to be done there. So I look forward to trying to make that work, but I also know that there's great opportunity that needs to be realized with mining and development, quite frankly, and we need to make sure that we are providing training and skills, particularly for First Nations people, to make sure that they can take advantage of the economic opportunity that comes with mining in the mining industry. We believe that the best way to do that is working with municipalities, working with the education system, working with chambers of commerce, and working with young people, frankly, to encourage them to take up these kinds of occupations.
Thank you, Ms. Horwath. Our next questioner will be Deputy Grand Chief Les Ludit to Ms. Horwath.
Ms. Horwath, if you are elected Premier of Ontario, will your government expand the Ring of Fire discussions and consultations to include neighboring impacted Nan First Nations to the west and east of the Ring of Fire, such as those within the Mushkegowuk Council on James Bay, who wish to derive their fair share of all the economic benefits from this massive $60 billion development?
Well, thanks, Deputy Grand Chief, and I'm glad you described the development the way that you did as one that can provide great opportunity for great numbers of people. You know, it's interesting what we see across the world in terms of the concern when they look at Ontario and the lack of a primary role that government has taken in ensuring that those discussions and those dialogues take place, which is why, frankly, New Democrats didn't support the Far North Act, because we know First Nations were not supporting the Far North Act because the government-to-government relationship, their duty to consult, all of those pieces weren't taken care of in that bill. That's why Chambers of Commerce, in fact, in the North backed up your position. That's why municipalities, frankly, backed up that position. There should be a direct upfront role that the provincial government takes in ensuring that not only the Ring of Fire, but all mining opportunities are opened up to proper consultation, proper discussion, proper revenue sharing, frankly, as well as training and opportunities for First Nations communities. And with the size of that development, particularly, or at least the opportunity that deposit provides, absolutely, it will be widespread discussion and consultation in a very respectful government-to-government way with First Nations communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Horwath. Response now from Ms. Lynn.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Deputy Grand Chief. You know, the Ring of Fire development is so massive. It's a $60 billion opportunity that the entire North, and as I have said, the entire province and I believe the country can benefit from this economic development, but it has to be done right. And so when I was in Attawapiskat, the concern that I heard from the Attawapiskat First Nation was about the water supply, making sure that all of the protections that need to be in place in terms of the watershed, that we pay attention to those and that we work with all of the First Nations who are going to be affected and who can benefit. So the agreement that is in place with the 9 Matawa First Nations, that's part of the process, but there's a much broader process, and you know that has to do with making sure that all communities are part of the discussion, that you know that as we look project by project, and there's going to be lots of spin-off from the Ring of Fire, and the whole notion of resource revenue sharing and making sure that the communities that are the most affected are the communities that are able to benefit, so that there's training for young people, so that there are the health and social supports that are necessary so that communities can take part. All of that is part of what I think has to be the relationship as we move forward on the Ring of Fire.
Thank you, Ms. Wynne. We have time for one more question, and for that I'll go to Kenora Mayor David Canfield for Ms. Wynne.
Thank you. The next question. Social supports. Northerners with limited means have great difficulty making ends meet, finding and keeping affordable housing, and staying healthy. While their needs are no different than elsewhere in Ontario, the solutions here are much more difficult and more expensive to achieve. What steps will your government take to ensure that Northern citizens have the same supports they need at a level that is commensurate with the cost of living that we endure?
Thank you, Mayor Canfield. Thank you for your question. And I think that goes back to my comment about how important it is that the provincial government work hand in hand with municipalities on all of these issues. So whether it is the uploading that we have undertaken, so $1.5 billion a year that the provincial government has uploaded, costs that were downloaded by the previous Conservative government, we are uploading those social costs. Whether it's the changes to the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund and making sure that that $500 million, because ultimately it will be $500 million, that northern and rural communities benefit the most from that. And that we make sure that as we discuss policing costs, that we make the fairest decisions around mitigation of those. But all of that only works if we are in ongoing discussion and we make sure that we understand the issues from your perspective and what you are coping with. And that is core to our plan, making sure that we make the investments across the north that are going to allow these all of your communities to thrive, and at the same time that our relationship, the relationship between the provincial government and municipalities, is a strong enough one that as there are challenges, we can confront them together. That's our plan.
Thank you, Ms. Wynne. Response from Ms. Horwath.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm glad you raised this issue because it speaks not only to the concerns around social housing, affordable housing, but social services altogether and health services, frankly. Northerners experience a lesser, I believe, a lesser amount of opportunity when it comes to access to these services. I've spoken to a number of district social services boards who tell me that they are not getting through to the Liberal government the very issues around the cost of delivering services. So, for example, in Southern Ontario, you can provide services like home care very, very easily because they're compact, dense communities. In the North, the home care worker might have to travel an hour and a half between clients to be able to provide this service, which is why home care wait lists are very long in the North. We tried to get the Liberals to deal with the wait lists in long-term care and in home care particularly, because we knew those wait lists were right here in Northern Ontario. We know that the building season is shorter. We know that the cost of electricity is higher because the seasons are colder and longer, because the lights are on a bit more. So we have to build all of these realities in, not only to investments around social housing, but also to the other kinds of social services that we provide, because we have to recognize that it's different in the North, and the solutions have to be different for Northerners if your needs are going to be met.
Thank you, Ms. Horwath. Well, that concludes, almost concludes the debate. It concludes the question portion of the forum. We'll now proceed to closing statements, and again, before the debate started, the order of statements was drawn by both parties. Ms. Wynne, you have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Thank you very much, and I want to thank everyone for taking the time to be here today and for taking part in this process on a beautiful afternoon. It's very important to me that people understand that the plan that we are putting forward is for the whole province, and it is different in the North, and the solutions for the North have to be different. But we also share a common goal in this province to make sure that every child and every senior and every family has an opportunity to take part in the economy and to have the highest quality of life. When I came into this office, I said that I would be Premier for the whole province, and I have honored that commitment. I have traveled to every corner of Ontario, and I have met with Ontarians in every single community that I have traveled to. In the North, I've been to places like Fort Severn and Kenora and Sault Ste. Marie. I've been to Sudbury and Moosonee and Attawapskat and Fort Francis and Timmins and New Liskeard and so many others. And I've seen what people are dealing with. In my first year of in this job as Premier, I said that I would have a cabinet meeting in Northern Ontario, and we did that. And I will do that again because I think it's very important for all of my cabinet colleagues to hear from people in the North about the issues that concern them. I'm also committed to keeping a Ministry of Natural Resources, a Ministry of Northern Development and Mines, and a standalone Ministry of Aboriginal Affairs. Yesterday, I announced my commitment to setting up the Development Corporation. It is so important that I will not consider my premiership successful if I'm privileged to be re-elected unless we've been able to deliver on significant progress in the Ring of Fire. And most importantly, if I am re-elected, if we are re-elected, I want the North to be well represented in our government. Si nous sommes réélus, je veux que le Nord de l'Ontario soit bien représenté au sein de mon gouvernement. In uncertain times, our plan for jobs and growth and for building Ontario up is the right plan for Ontario. It's the right plan for Northern Ontario. So let's get at it. Thank you very much. Merci, miigwech.
Thank you, Ms. Wynne. Closing statement from Ms. Horwath.
I want to start by thanking you for the great questions. I believe Ontario is a great province, and I believe it can be stronger when all regions are thriving, including the North. I believe it's clear that the Liberals don't deserve to be re-elected. Your tax dollars, the ones that you send to Queen's Park, should be invested in better jobs, healthcare, infrastructure, and instead they've been wasted on partisan advertising, CEO bonuses, billions wasted on corruption, incompetence, Orange Air Ambulance, e-health, the gas plant scandals. Northerners are hardworking, honest people, and they deserve a hardworking, honest government. You need a Premier who listens to you. You need a Premier who respects you and who will deliver for you. The first step is to clean up the corruption. In this election, you have a choice. You can say no to the nonsensical Tim Hudak message. You can say no to a corrupt Liberal Party that does not respect your priorities or your tax dollars. And you can say yes to New Democrats who will respect your priorities, who will make sure your families have opportunity, who will stand up for what's right. For New Democrats, it is game on. It's time for a premier for all of Ontario. My Ontario includes the North. The NDP plan is a plan for you because it was built with you. It represents your priorities. I have listened to you. I have heard you. I respect you. And if I am privileged to become the premier of this province, I will work hard every single day to deliver results for you. On June 12th, vote to clean up Queen's Park. On June 12th, vote for a plan that makes sense. On June 12th, vote NDP.
Thank you very much, Ms. Horwath. That concludes our Northern Leaders debate, hosted by, I'm just going to repeat again, the Northwestern Ontario Municipal Association, the Northwestern Ontario Associated Chambers of Commerce, the Federation of Northern Ontario Municipalities, the Northeastern Ontario Chambers of Commerce, and the Anishinaabe Nation. I just want to ask our esteemed panelists, some of who drove a long way to be here today that had some very thoughtful questions, if they just stand up and we'll give them a round of applause as well. A big thanks to our sponsor, the Northern Policy Institute, and the supporters, netnewsledger.com and the Valhalla Inn. And almost finally, as one who's thrown his hat into the political ring once, I can only imagine what these two are going to be doing for the next 3 weeks. You know what, I don't even want to imagine. They probably don't even know where they're going to be tomorrow. I want to thank Kathleen Wynne, Andrea Horwath for coming today. Thank you very much. Almost finally, big applause for event organizers Kristen Oliver of NOMA and Charlotte Robinson of NOAC. Thank you ever so much. And before we go, just don't forget on the 12th, your family, your friends, your neighbors, vote. I mean, we're under 50% in this province. I mean, that is not very good. And we've got to do much better than that. So get out and kick some butt before the 12th and get some people to vote. Thank you very much.